Assalamualaikum and good day to everyone. Today, we, Ameer, Azri and Intan Rafeena, are going to present our research project on the topic police brutality should be ended. We have done this research for a couple of months and we are going to present our findings as well as to give exposure to the public regarding why police brutality should be ended. Next, please. So many people think that police brutality is only when a police officer hurts a civilian while being arrested. However, it is more complex than that. Police brutality is the use of excessive physical force, or it can come in the form of verbal abuse or intimidation by a member in the police force. Considering that many who serve in law enforcement are committed to justice, the violence inflicted by police in news headlines today must be understood in relation to larger social and economic arrangements. This is because it puts individuals and populations in harm and also leading to death. So we chose this topic because this is a serious form of public issues, as law enforcement must function as an element or a body that consists of organized and civilized officers. Next, please. Hence why we believe that police brutality should be ended because first, it causes custodial death and injuries. Second, it inflicts racism. And third, it ruins the police organization's reputation. So back in 2020, the murder of George Floyd, an African-American man, by a white police officer in the United States, sparked a national reckoning with police brutality and systemic racism. Protesters calls in the United States to defund the police, ban the use of chokeholds, and end practices that target minority groups or communities, prompted a public policy debate over police reform and an examination of how other countries approach policing. So, coincidentally, in the same year in Malaysia, there was a case involving a man named V. Mugilarasu, a Malaysian Indian man who died while waiting for his trial in custody. The cause of death was reported as sudden death, although the victim's brother noticed severe bruises on the face, swellings on the body, and blood stains in the mouth of Mugilarasu's body or his remains. Even Mugilarasu's lawyers said that he did not suffer from any medical problems or whatsoever. And the pathologists also concurred about the swellings on his body that were assumed to be gotten during his time in custody. So if we think about it, why does this case remain unknown to many people? Is it to make sure that the image of police remains untainted? Moreover, Derek Chauvin, the officer who shot and killed George Floyd, has been charged with at least 18 counts of police misconduct before the case of George Floyd. He's been involved in police shootings and situations that most people perceive to be cases of police brutality. What matters is that there is a trend going on here, both in Malaysia and the United States. Problematic police need to be removed from working. There is no reason to let brutality continue in a police force. This needs to change. Next, please. Okay, so these are the victims from famous cases of police brutality all over the world. So first up, we got George Floyd, an African-American man who died while being arrested by a police officer in the US. in 2020. The second one is V. Mugilarasu, the person that I've mentioned before. And the last one is A. Ganapati, a Malaysian Indian man also, who was beaten with a rubber hose in police custody in 2021 before being pronounced dead. Next, please. So the strongest reason why police brutality should be ended is because it causes many custodial deaths and injuries. So death and injuries in custody would include the effect of police brutality during the initial confrontation with the offender, during the process of arrest, during transport to facility, or during incarceration. So the current Home Minister of Malaysia, Datuk Sri Hamzah Zainuddin, reported that 13 custodial deaths had taken place throughout the year 2020. 7 investigation papers were opened against these police officers who were involved for the findings of the court to bring justice to the victims as well as their families. Meanwhile, at the other extreme, the New England Journal of Medicine in the United States had found that there were 222 custodial death cases where legal interventions were involved throughout the year 2016 in the US. While most custodial injuries were remain unreported, these high numbers of custodial deaths are largely contributed by injuries, which are the byproduct of the brutality itself from the custodian. In the case of George Floyd, he died on the spot from suffocating while being murdered brutally while being arrested in 2020. Meanwhile, in the case of A. Ganapati in Malaysia, he was beaten up with a rubber hose while in police custody, resulting in severe bruises all over his torso before being pronounced dead. In our survey, 91.4% of 35 respondents said that beating is the most common form of police brutality, beating. This result shows that brutal police are infamously known for the culture of beating the offender or criminal in custody. These reported cases of custodial death are the testament of the brutality shown by police officers throughout the world. I believe that humans, even criminals, do not deserve to be treated brutally. Otherwise, they should only be lawfully punished by the order of the court if convicted of any offense. Also, in our survey, we have found that 34.3% of 35 respondents said that denial of medical care is one of the most common forms of police brutality. So, denial of medical care. It can seriously affect the person in custody's health negatively to a point where it could be deadly or fatal. This is what is happening right now in Iran, where the Iranian authorities chilling disregard for human life has effectively turned Iran's prisons into a waiting room of death for ill prisoners, where treatable conditions like flu tragically become fatal, according to Diana El-Tahawi, the Deputy Regional Director for the Middle East and North Africa at Amnesty International. So we should all be against this unlawful practice because I believe that it is against every human's rights, where everyone should be accessible to medical attention when needed. We believe that these cases of custodial death and injuries should not be normal anywhere in the world, and ending these cases should be the main purpose to end police brutality. Next, please. So the second reason why police brutality needs to be ended is because It also inflicts racism on people of certain races and ethnicities. Mounting evidence shows that death at the hands of the police disproportionately impact these people, pointing to systemic racism in policing. Discrimination has eroded the public's trust in law enforcement, especially the police. Police trust varies by races in the US, with African Americans having lowest levels of trust than other races, such as Caucasian or Hispanic. Meanwhile, Europeans trust the police more than legal or political systems, while minority groups have lower confidence in the police than the general population in Europe. Also, people who identify as LGBTQ+, on the other hand, are frequently fearful of police. In recent years, authorities have been accused of failing to stop violent hate crimes such as anti-Muslim mobs in India's Muslim communities, causing widespread distrust towards the police force. These sentiments towards the police have shown that police brutality is happening all around the world. It has instilled a common perception among the people or citizens that those who are colored skin are not able to get away from the gaze and guise of police violence. And even worse in some countries, the white supremacist ones, the white supremacist stereotypes, I would say. At the end of the day, aren't we all human and deserve to be treated like one, despite the color of our skin? Misconducting towards a human being should be considered a violation of human rights, for me. So in particular, police brutality should be considered a human rights issue. And this is agreed by 77.1% of our respondents based on our survey that we have conducted before. For instance, Derek Chauvin was arrested for the murder of George Floyd, had pressed his knee to the back of Floyd's neck as Floyd yelled out for his mama. This power also extends to the other three officers who stood guard and participated in the brutality. Without technology, some white people are allowed to conveniently continue using racial tropes to enact physical violence and garner police brutality against Black bodies. In this regard, Black people or African American people do not pull the race card. The race card is pulled on them. Both the officers who killed Tamir Rice, as we can see in the picture, in Cleveland in 2014, and Antoine Rose in East Pittsburgh, I believe, in 2018. Both are Black teenagers. So the officers were fired from their previous positions as cops. But when an officer is removed, the Fraternal Order of Police actually assists them indiscreetly, resigning rather than being fired. This allows problematic police to work for a different department. So is this action rational? After taking someone's life, now they deserve to continue living, while the family of the victims are to live a miserable life for the rest of their lives, for the loss of their loved ones, like Tamir Rice and Antoine Rose. Hence, we strongly believe that police brutality causes racism and it needs to stop. So moving on to Intan.
So continuing on, the third reason why police brutality should be ended is because it ruins the police organization reputation. Police are often seen as a reliable and respected authority that serves the public to ensure safety and to fight for justice. However, when the police has humiliating image of police caused by brutality, its reputation will deteriorate. It will unconsciously result in a loss of respect and trust from the public towards police forces. At its worst, unlawful use of force by police can result in people being deprived of their right to life. According to Amnesty.org, in the case of Nakia Jackson in 2014, he was shot dead by police in Kingston, Jamaica, while he was working innocently at his job as a cook. Police had been looking for a crime suspect and Nakia was shot dead because he fit the broad description, even though there was nothing to link him to any crime. This surely will result in Nakia family losing respect and trust in the police, who are supposed to be the authority the public should look up to. Besides, Nakia families and witnesses in the case have suffered intense intimidation from police, as they have sought justice. Based on our survey, one of the respondents, when asked, what will happen to the image of police if police brutality cases arise, answered that their credibility and professionalism will be questioned. The body that should protect the people will no longer be trusted, as they are the ones who actually harm people. Even though not all police are bad, the amount is enough to make people not trust them. Moreover, at least 20 out of 35 respondents that, according to our survey, say that the police image will be tarnished. These responses show that police brutality will only bring damage to the police reputation, as they will be seen as violent and unlawful. Besides, the public will only be intimidated and even terrified when being confronted by a police officer, even in the event of lawful businesses like getting pulled over on the road for speeding. Most police forces in the world allow their members to hold a weapon, usually a gun, to ensure the safety of the public by using it in desperate and life-threatening events, such as an armed robbery and also mass shooting. However, the opposite happens, where some police use their weapons to harm anyone suspicious without any conviction as a result of discriminations towards a certain group of people. Well, in the case of Michael Brown, an unarmed African American man, the police officers have shot him 6 times, indicating violation of the law of using their weapons. And also the use of force that was neither necessary nor proportionate. This will result in minority groups in certain countries' fear of the police force weapons, which should not be happening in the first place. We believe that police should have a good reputation amongst the public for them to be trusted when the public is in need of their protection and security. However, the opposition argues that police brutality is needed because they believe that the police must win every fight in the street, so criminals know with certainty they must comply with a lawful order or risk possible death if they don't. The opposition also agrees that the one thing society can have is criminals believing that challenging the police physically is an escape option. If the suspect resists arrest and escalate the resistance to escape capture, the police must match the escalation to overcome the resistance and eventually force compliance. This means it is applied to all regardless of the race, creed, color, or gender of the criminal or the arresting police officer. Moreover, some supporters of police brutality also agrees that police work is dangerous and they need greater freedom to use deadly force today because of the increase in heavily armed drug gangs, said them. However, all of this argument could be countered back because, as agreed by 88.6% of our respondents, justice cannot prevail through brutality. Instead, we could all agree that unlawful force by police violates the right to be free from discrimination and racism, the right to liberty and security, and also the right to have equal protection under the law. Moreover, the UN Basic Principle on the Use of Force and Firearms by Law Enforcement Official, BPUFF, is the key international instrument that deals with police use of force. Well, there are strict international rules and regulations that determine how and when police officers can use force. So, especially lethal force. Hence, it must be remembered that police, being the person with authority, have the utmost obligation to protect and respect the right to life. In fact, to argue the opposition point that police work is dangerous, it needs to be noted that police work is much less dangerous than what it used to be. The number of officers killed in the line of duty is half of what it was nearly 20 years ago. And according to FBI, the number of officers killed dropped from 134 in 1973 to 67 in 1990. And also, given the rise in the number of police officers on duty in the field, the decreased fatality rate is even more significant. Police officers are rarely the victims of drive-by gang shootings or the criminal. It is always the innocent bystanders and rival gang members who have been the victims. In a nutshell, we believe that there is no room for police brutality anywhere in the world, as it ruins the police organization reputation, inflict racism, and also causes many custodial deaths and injuries. Brutal police will be seen as a disgrace to the public, government, as well as the police organization itself. So police all around the globe should treat people, even criminals, with the respect and justice they deserve to maintain the trust they gain from the public. People whose lives are taken away unlawfully under police custody should be remembered and brought to justice. And meanwhile, family of those people who are yet to seek justice should not be ignored by the authority, as this is a human right issue that denies that everyone should be treated equally and righteously. Moreover, racism should not exist at all in the heart of all police officers to prevent discrimination from happening to certain group of people, especially minorities. I say so because people of minority groups should not be treated violently by anyone, especially the police, because they are entitled to every right a human being deserves. Some measures have even been taken by many countries as initiative to solve this problem, and that includes to diversify their armed force. Because police diversify, according to some experts in the United States, is said to boost innovation, reduce bias, and enhance community ties. And according to research on US police, hiring more Black officers does not inevitably result in fewer deadly contacts with Black individuals. Similarly, in post-apartheid South Africa, which has a national police force, the government has pushed for more Black officers to be hired, particularly in leadership roles. And to reduce tension, police departments around the world have employed community policing strategies. This includes the use of community liaisons, who works alongside officers in Australia to reduce crime and also develop cross-cultural understanding and communication between the police and also the minorities. And community policing programs in California had also successfully reduced crime rates, increased public trust in the police, and also improved the police organization reputation itself among the public. Moreover, people around the world should go public when someone they know suspiciously die in police custody. This is to prevent brutal police from creating a cover-up case to hide their violence and also injustice. Well, in the case of George Floyd that Ameer mentioned earlier, someone had luckily recorded the actual footage of when Floyd was murdered by a police officer and posted it on social media. And this created chaos and outrage all over the world, especially in the US, where police brutality is considered common there. Hence, we believe that when cases like this are brought to light, justice will prevail at last, leaving no room at all for violence and brutality. Before ending our presentation, I want to highlight our current progress so far for the essay. We are 90% done for the essay, and we plan to thoroughly cross-check the facts, the sources, and also our language usage. All of this will be done so that we are able to successfully fulfill the purpose of this essay, which is to highlight why police brutality should be ended. So that's all from the two of us. Thank you.